April, I'm just going to ask that you tell us a little bit of your story about how you started your family.
All right. Hi, my name is April, and my husband, Mike, and I have been married now 13 years. And like most people, when we got married, we just kind of assumed that things would happen sort of the way we planned. And so we decided to put off trying for a while and just kind of had some time to ourselves, which was great. And then about 6 years, we'd been married about 6 years, and we thought, okay, yeah, let's try. And then it just didn't happen. So after about 6 months, we went and got things checked out, and we found out right away that it wasn't going to happen. I I say we're fortunate that we found out right away, because you probably know people that have spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and then found out that they couldn't. So we were fortunate in that we found out like right away. So that is understandably a pretty that's emotional news to get, especially when you've just kind of in the back of your mind your whole life just kind of thought the way things were going to happen was just going to be a natural progression. So that sort of made us wonder, do we still want to be parents? Is this really something that we want bad enough that we're going to take extra steps to make it happen? And we went to counseling because that was something that we were going through the grief process of mourning the way we thought it was going to happen. And that brings up a lot. And we weren't necessarily doing well together communicating that to each other. And so we went to counseling for several years and then came to a decision that we still wanted to be parents, that was important to us. And then it was a matter of deciding how we were going to become parents, because there's so many wonderful options out there. I found out about embryo adoption and it just clicked. Like it was just the perfect, like, oh, this feels right away. Because while I'm not able to get pregnant, I can be pregnant. And so this was an option that allowed me to be pregnant with our child, and then even like to nurse and all of those wonderful bonding things that happen with pregnancy. Even though embryo adoption is a fairly new option, there are actually many adoption agencies that offer that. And so I made a spreadsheet of all the different agencies that there were, and I called around, or I got information packets from all of them to see which felt like a good fit. Because when you adopt, you're also like, you're forever going to have a relationship with that adoption agency. So it's not just the family that you're adopting from that you'll have a relationship with. You're also going to be dealing with that agency, because at least in our case, we have a semi-open adoption in that whatever communication we have with the biological family is all through the adoption agency. And so that's something that I like to stress when I'm talking about this to other prospective people, is that like this needs to be a relationship that you feel comfortable with the agency, that they're going to take good care of you and that they have your best interests and that they know your priorities. So one of the things that was a question I would ask when I would talk to adoption agencies is about their matching process with the embryos, because my husband, as you know, is a giant. He's 6'7", and his whole family is extremely tall. And so, it's a natural thing when you're raising a child to say, oh, eat your vegetables and you'll be tall like daddy. And I know, like, no one's going to guarantee that, oh, you're going to have a tall child or whatever. But I wanted there to at least be a chance. And so I would ask that question. And many times the answer I would get from the adoption agency would be something along the lines of, beggars can't be choosers. Like, you'll just get what you get and you'll be happy about it. And I didn't feel that didn't make me feel comfortable. And so the agency that we chose put a very high priority on matching, and I felt like they understood my priorities. And so we started the adoption process with that agency. And it's a little bit like match.com in that you like make up a little book of how great you are. I call it like, look at us, don't you want us to have your babies? And so it's just a little bit about you, like what your interests and hobbies are and talents, and, whether religion is important to you or whether you enjoy traveling or, just different things like that. So we made up one of those books, and then we put it in the adoption agency's hands. And then and we had to do like a home study and all of that other stuff too. And then it was up to the adoption agency to kind of find another family that seemed like a good match. And so within about 6 months, they contacted us and said, hey, just to let you know, we've sent your book along to a family. And then within 2 weeks, they came back to us and said that family hadn't thought that it was a good fit. And so that didn't come through. So I was upset about that. And after about a week, I emailed the adoption agency and just thanked them and said, I realize this is a really difficult job, and just thank you for doing the best you can. And the adoption agency emailed me back like within 2 minutes and said, oh my goodness, I was actually about to email you and say, we've just found another family that we're sending your information to. Mm-hmm. So just like, hold on, it could be really soon. And so that was so exciting. And that family did choose us. And so that family is in the UK. It's a couple, and they used an egg donor. And so we got information on the egg donor, and we got information on the genetic dad. And then we were able to make our decision based on that. Like, just, it kind of goes both ways, right? So mm-hmm. They found out a lot about us, and they said, yes, that sounds good. And then they sent us information, like pictures of their kids. And then we looked at that and prayed over that and decided after a week that felt good to us too. And so that all happened in October of 2016. And then in November, the partner passed away unexpectedly. And so we, while we had been super excited and like everything was just like boom, 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 really quickly. And I was even thinking, oh, I might be pregnant like before 2017 or something, And that wasn't the case, because of course everything just came to a halt. And so we just stayed in communication with the adoption agency to say, we're not in any hurry. Just let him know we're praying for them. And, whatever he wants to do, we're just totally fine with. And so it wasn't until then 2017 that we completed the actual adoption process, because he was kind and generous enough to continue with that, because he and his partner had like chosen us together. And so he made the commitment to continue with that, which was really just huge. And so then the embryos arrived the day after Valentine's Day in 2017. And we got with the Fertility Institute and started like prepping my body for a transfer. We did try one transfer that wasn't successful. And then a couple of times like got really close to a transfer, and then my body didn't look exactly right. And so it was just starting to get real frustrating. Mm-hmm. So we took a break. So we had tried for a couple of months in a row, and then we just decided to take a breather. And so my husband and I took like a road trip and just chilled out, unplugged for a couple of weeks. And we came back and we tried again over the summer. It was successful, and our little boy Henry was born in April of 2018. Mm-hmm. And so he's just turned 2 and is just the biggest joy. We are so excited to be parents. And it was a long, long road to get here, and totally worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And whenever I listen to your story, April, it's just so amazed because there are so many factors that are involved. And, as you're talking, I know your story. I'm your friend. We've known each other for a long time. But, just writing down some of the things that along the way that you said that are so important, and they're so important for the listener to hear too. First of all, whenever you mentioned fertility issues, which of course is a wide range, like you said, everybody anticipates that getting pregnant and starting a family is just automatic and going to happen. And actually, in this, I've already mentioned this in one of my lectures, is that like 1 in 7 couples has trouble, has some fertility issues, and a lot of them look to reproductive technologies, which is, focus in our chapter 2, reproductive technologies. So I like that you mentioned that because it's more common than people think. You also mentioned something, how y'all considered a child-free option. And more couples are considering that now these days because we know, I mean, this is a child development class. We know more what needs to be involved in raising children. It's more than just giving birth and throwing some food at them and making them go to school, right? There's so many things involved. But so child-free option is what some people choose. So I know Henry, so I'm glad you guys stuck it out and just impressed. I mean, this interview right now, I could also share with my marriage and family class because of some of these things that you talked about, and you also talked about how you supported your couple relationship with counseling. And with a third party that could help you guys sort through the details. I mean, your story is full of so many details and joys and challenges.
So to your point on the fact that some couples choose a child-free option, or at least consider that when faced with infertility, we know another couple, became friends with another couple when we were at that beginning stage of, okay, we just found out it's not going to happen on its own. What are we going to do? This other couple were in the exact same situation. Like, they had the same diagnosis, same reason, everything. And we hung out with them like solid for 6 months because it was like, we literally felt like the only 4 people in the world that understood what we were going through. And they actually chose to not have children. And they still, now they have a dog and they do a lot of traveling, and that's what has made them happy. And we made a different choice, but I feel that it's really important for you to evaluate that. One of my frustrations has been that early on, when I would say to people, oh, it's just not going to happen, so we're trying to figure out what we're going to do, they would say, oh, well, just adopt. Like it's a real quick, easy transition to make. And at least for us, that's not the case. And I feel now I wouldn't have it any other way. And I am overjoyed with how our story has unfolded. But at the time, it would have been a mistake for us to just push through and do something right away. We needed time to mourn the loss of the way we thought it would happen, and mourn the loss of our imagined children that we were going to have. We just had to take some time and pack that away. Like, okay, now we're going to find another way, but we just need to be sad a little while, Right. And I have said to the point about taking time for our couple relationship, those years in counseling really saved us. Like, I have said before, my husband Mike and I, we are stubborn people. We would stay married no matter what. We were going to make it because we chose to, and not because not because we were necessarily enjoying it. And the couples counseling really helped us to celebrate how different we are and figure out how to communicate in a way that allowed us both to be happy. And that has made our home a much happier place for children. And I'm very happy about that.
Right. And that's what I was saying. You bring up so many points because the environment in which you raise your children is crucial. And extreme tension or still mourning that loss. I love that you mentioned that. It is a loss. Not all losses mean, a death. Sometimes it's a loss of a concept or an ideal or a dream. And, mourning that and getting over that, I think is so important to point out. And, I love that people do always have advice for you, right? I mean, there's plenty of advice out there. You have to basically say, I can't hear anybody else. We have to figure this out ourselves. But just adopt should never be in the same sentence. You know that my husband and I, and our class knows this, that my sister was a surrogate for us, and people had all kinds of suggestions for us and advice. And most of it was not even relevant because they did not have the full picture. But that is something that I wanted to ask you. Did you get any negative, pushback from people? Because embryo adoption is semi-new and not everybody knows about it, which is why I'm bringing this story to my students too, because it's important to educate people about these opportunities for families and all of the components involved. Tell me a little bit about how people responded.
Well, it has overall been very positive. Most people, I would venture to say, don't truly understand, and they're just happy that we had a baby, and that's fine with me. Like, I don't need to just spill my guts to everybody. I've tried my best to explain it to people that I feel are curious, or close family members and friends, for them to know. And I still think that there are some people that don't understand. Like, I've had people make comments, people that know that Henry is not our genetic child, have said, "Oh, he looks just like Mike," or "Oh, your eyes look so much the same." And I just look at them and I think, okay, I struggle, really. I do struggle with whether to correct them or to bring it up again, because I'm like, it's not a secret. Like, I want Henry to always know that he is adopted. And in fact, I wrote him a little children's book when he was 18 months old, all about his story of how he came to be a part of our family. Because even though my intention is to always talk about it and for him to always know, it doesn't really come up that often, honestly. And so you have to be intentional about using those words and just making it like a natural part of life. And for us, reading happens a lot around here. And so that was a natural way of just making sure that it's part of the conversation that we're having. But as far as people being confused, I guess more often I get people confused, not necessarily upset about it. And also, I learned after I got some of those uncomfortable questions early on about oh, whose fault is it? Or, weird stuff like that. I learned to just start the conversation by saying, "I'm really excited to tell you about how we're going to be able to have a family. And I really appreciate you just not asking questions."
Yeah. It's all about how you're presenting it to them, right? Yes. I mean, here are our boundaries and my expectations from the very beginning. Well, I love that. And gosh, that's a great advice for any kind of interaction with people whenever we are not sure what the response should be, or whenever we know what our response is, always. So tell me a little bit how your pregnancy went.
Oh, it was a dream. It really was. Because honestly, I think because we had taken that little bit of time off in those first couple of times of trying, where I feel like I was like this, it's got to happen. It's got to happen. It's got to happen. And then realizing my body doesn't respond well to that, this isn't working. And just taking that couple of months off allowed me, when we came and tried it, the time that it was successful, Mike and I told no one. We were the only two people that knew. Well, us and the doctors and the whole team of people, but we didn't tell any friends or family or anybody. And then we were able to surprise them with the news, and that was really cool. And then I was just so happy the whole time that it that our dream was coming true, I really feel like that translated into my body just being really excited about it too.
Mhm.
I was 36 the whole time I was pregnant, and then turned 37 right after I had Henry. So in like medical terms or whatever, that's considered old. They have these parameters at the
Right.
doctor's office where they're like, oh, if the mom is over a certain age, then we have to run all these extra tests.
Mhm.
And so they ran all the extra tests, even though the baby I was carrying, the egg donor had been in her 20s when these embryos, like when her eggs were harvested, she was in her mid 20s.
Mhm.
And we know the embryos are healthy because there's two healthy kids running around already from this
Mhm.
set of embryos. So the whole time I was very comfortable and confident, like, this is all going to work. You can run all the tests you want, but
Mhm.
I already know it's going to be fine.
Mhm.
And even like our doctor obviously knew that this was an adopted embryo. And so she'd ask me all the, the questions of like, did I have a history of this or a history of that in my family? And I was like, are you asking because you want to test the baby? Because that's not really going to
Yeah.
apply. I mean, I don't know that they had ever encountered it before. So even
Mhm.
though they knew, they were like, you know what? It's just easier to check these boxes. So we're just going to check these boxes.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
just do what you got to do. So it was smooth sailing up until it was time to have the baby.
Tell us about that.
And then I ended up with a C-section, to just to skip right to the end there. But what happened was, like, so the whole pregnancy, super, like, no real concerns ever. And then we had set a date for induction just in case I didn't, automatically go into labor. And boy, because there had been just so much medical intervention to allow me to get pregnant, I was like, I just want there to be one thing that happens on its own. I would just
Mhm.
love for there to be like one part of this that's just like the natural way, right?
Mhm.
And so I was so wanting to go into labor on my own. And I walked and walked and walked and walked all over the neighborhood. And I never went into labor. Not even the nothing, not even a pang. So we went in for the induction, and then I was like, well, maybe, once the induction, like, once I get a little bit of whatever that juice is, then my body will just kick in and it'll be fine. And it did seem that way at first.
Mhm.
At first, like, things were progressing really quickly. And my husband was even on the phone with both of our moms, like, hey, this actually might be happening soon. Like, get here.
Mhm.
And then I got all the way to like 5 or 6 centimeters and then stalled out. It was like,
Mhm.
that was as far as I go, apparently. And Henry, our son, never dropped ever. He was like way up under this rib. and and so, like, it was sort of a combination of the baby's not anywhere close to where he needs to be, and your
Mhm.
body's not anywhere close to where it needs to be. And so the doctor knew, of course, that I had wanted it to happen as naturally as possible. And so she let me try for longer than probably she would have with another patient. But she finally just came in and said, you know what, this is getting to be like, your body is now exhausted from trying, and it's just
Mhm.
not like, it's not working. And so
Mhm.
we need to go ahead and do a C-section and just get him out.
Mhm.
And I cried and cried and cried. And I told, my mom and my best friend and my husband were in the room. And I was like, I know that tomorrow it's not going to matter at all because I'm going to
Mhm.
have this beautiful baby and it's just not going to matter. But right now, I'm
Mhm.
tearing up now. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm just really sad because it just was like, man, can I have anything? Like,
Mhm.
I just wanted it to be. But anyway, he got here and he's healthy. And that was, genuinely, 2 minutes afterward, it was fine. But
Right.
it was, again, just, it was important for me to be sad about that. Like, it
Mhm.
was another version of, but this is the way I wanted it to be. This is the way I thought it was going to be. And I vividly remember so they did the C-section. You're awake, of course, and like can't see anything, but you can hear a bunch. And the doctor, when she pulled him out from under my rib cage, I was like, I said, I can breathe, because I had not taken a deep breath in months, it felt like. And then when she pulled him out, she said, "Oh my goodness, April, you're going to be so glad you did not try and push this boy out of your body." He was over 9 pounds. He was a chunk.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm fine.
Well, this might be a good time to show some pictures of that
Oh, of
fabulous
course.
baby and family of yours, if you don't mind. I'm going
Please.
to share my screen and tell us who this is.
Oh, so that's my husband, Mike, and that's actually the day of our transfer. So that's the getup that we were wearing before we had our embryo transfer.
Fancy. Y'all put on those hats every now and then just to remember the day. Let's see what else we got. Oh,
And
tell us
that's
about
right after he was born. I could not stop crying. I was just, I mean, obviously a huge relief that he was here and healthy and everything was okay. But then all those hormones are just blowing free. And, right after that, they take the baby, and Mike and Henry left while they were putting me all back together. And I was just sobbing. Like, I could not stop crying. And I remember, like, through the blue partition thing, one of the doctors was just rubbing my arm, like, through the fabric, just as a comfort, which was so sweet. And I still don't even know who it was, which doctor it was, but it just was, it's a really amazing, joyful time, but it's also just, there's just so much else going on too,
Oh, absolutely. It
And
doesn't seem right that Mike and the baby got to go and have their party, and there you were, still there.
well, Mike actually didn't want to leave me, which was really, it was
Yeah.
alternately sweet and then also frustrating. So,
Yeah.
you can see there, he's like rubbing my face. Like he was trying to comfort me because he could see that I was really emotional. And then they took Henry right away and were doing all the weighing and measuring and stuff. And they kept saying, like, "Dad, come over here, come take pictures, Dad, whatever." And Mike was like, "I don't want to leave you." And
Yeah.
I just finally had to say to him, "He needs you now, and I can't
Yeah.
be with him. So you got to go do that." And when they eventually wheeled me, put me back together again, wheeled me back into the room, I remember, you're laying down on the bed and they just wheel you in, and I see across the room my big giant husband, and they're doing skin to skin, so he doesn't have his shirt on, and we got like Henry, who is a giant baby but looks really tiny on Mike.
Yeah.
He's like tiny little boy with a little diaper on, and they're just kind of chilling together on the little couch. And
Oh.
I asked Mike later, how was that for you that time? And he said, "I really felt like I was taking that away from you. Like you had done all the hard work, and then I got to have those first couple of, minutes with him." And I was like, well, I'm glad he got to have that, because, like, honestly, I had a whole 10 months of him, like, chilling inside of me.
Right.
So it's
Right.
okay. It's good for them
Well,
to have
and
some time.
that reality that whenever the child comes into the world, we know almost instantly that it's just not about us and our feelings that much anymore. It's about what's best and what's right quite often. So, and look, you're teaching my whole class for me, bringing up the skin to skin kangaroo care. So I appreciate that, April.
Oh, good. Yeah, bring it.
And here he is. Tell us about this picture.
He is, I believe, 3 months old at this point. And that's in our backyard. I'm sure several photographers do this, where they have a package. You can have them come at 3-month increments of the first year and take pictures. And so we decided to do all of them in our backyard. So there's actually other pictures where we took with his newborn photos. We then tried to reenact those same photos when he was 1 year old, which was pretty hilarious. All the little things you can do when they're absolutely new is just really hilarious to try when they're one.
Right. Yeah. They change so much. And here he is. And April, my apologies. I did not give you a proper introduction earlier, but just so that the class knows, April is a very talented musician. She's also a veteran and a business owner. And Henry seems to be loving music and kind of following in your footsteps, but I've seen him try to build some things and explore. So he might be a musician that's also an engineer, right?
He has got a lot. He's, well, like most toddlers, just exploring everything, which is great. And we try to encourage that as much as possible. But the irony is, so my husband's an engineer, very analytical, very just like his creativity expresses itself in building things.
Right.
And then I am a musician and a singer. And so my creativity is really comes out in, like you see in this picture, in like playing music and singing. And we have often joked, like prior to having a child, how hilarious it would be if we had a child who was sporty or athletic at all, because neither one of us ever played sports. And Henry can kick a ball and throw a ball, and he is literally, he can dribble,
Oh
and
my goodness.
he's amazing. He can throw a football with like a perfect spiral.
Oh,
It's insane. And Mike and I are just like looking at each other going, what are we going to do?
you're just going to have a talented household, I think. I mean, and also that picture where he was sitting up, if he was 3 months old in that picture, that is very impressive because many, many children don't sit up for even a couple months after that. So that maybe his physical abilities were showing themselves extremely early.
Well, he was late to, well, not late, but he didn't walk until, I mean, he didn't crawl until he was 10 months old. Mm-hmm. So he was like, so in certain aspects developmentally, he was a little behind where they kind of thought, kids should be doing stuff, but he was very creative in how he could get things. Like he wasn't crawling because he could figure out if he was sitting on a quilt and there was something a little out of reach, he would just pull the quilt and get the item. So I was like, he's clearly intelligent enough to get what he needs. Like he'll get there when he gets there. So.
That is exactly right. Yeah. That is exactly right. I want to show these last two pictures of your family too. That's at y'all's home.
Yeah, that was Thanksgiving.
Just past Thanksgiving, yeah.
I think so.
He's even grown since then.
Oh my goodness, yes.
There he is. That's almost kind of like a cat that ate the canary look he has there.
Yeah, that was, we needed an updated family photo for some class project they were doing at his preschool. And I realized that we have a lot of like selfies maybe of the three of us, but we didn't have like a legit, So we took our camera to church, and like that's outside of our church. We just kind of stopped a random person to take our picture.
Well, you'll match too.
Well, I did plan that part because I was like, we're gonna stop somebody and have them take our picture, so we need to look like we go together,
Oh well, that is awesome. But I mean, that's amazing. That's so funny. All right. Well, have us back on. You have done a tremendous job, April, sharing your story and covering so many things. Anything else you think that the class should know or anything we missed?
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this because I think there are so many wonderful ways to build a family. And it's just wonderful to celebrate all the unique ways that we can be connected. Let me just wrap this up by saying, so Henry, when we got the embryos, we got 6 embryos, and we used an embryo that didn't take, and then we had an embryo that is Henry. Mm-hmm. And then we had the option to extend our, it's like a lease. You get the embryos for a year at a time. And so we extended our lease on the embryos so that we could try for a genetic sibling for Henry. And we have since realized that Henry's an only child. So there are 3 embryos left in the set. And so those embryos will go to someone else. Like the adoption agency is now going to find another family and potentially there'll be a child or two or three from that. And so Henry will have, he already has genetic siblings in one family, and then potentially would have genetic siblings in another family. And so, while it would have been nice maybe for us to have a second little one running around here, it's also really cool to realize that it's not that doesn't have siblings. He's an only child in our house, but
Right.
he has connections already with people around the world, you know, and that's just a really cool thing.
It is. It is a cool thing. I'm so glad that you mentioned that too, so that that kind of wraps up how the process is too.
Yeah.
You know, now there's a potential for another family or families or couple or couples to build a family, and
Yeah.
and that's incredible. And that's really where we started with this, and where I guess we'll end